Earth, the cradle of humanity, had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. The towering cities, once filled with the hum of bustling life, now lay in ruins, a testament to the relentless war fought across the galaxy. The enemy was relentless, an alliance of highly advanced alien species that had sought to eradicate humanity, seeing it as an affront to the universe's natural order. But amidst the chaos and devastation, humanity had a secret weapon, something that the invaders never anticipated: the Titan. The Titan was a colossal, ancient war machine, buried beneath the surface of Earth for centuries. It was a relic from a time long past when humanity's ancestors had ventured into the stars. Its power was beyond comprehension, its design nothing short of miraculous. But it had been dormant, lying in wait, its existence forgotten by all but a few of Earth's last defenders. Commander Kala Voss stood in the shadow of the Titan, her mind racing. The war had been long, the losses staggering, and humanity's chances of survival dwindling by the day. Her hands trembled as she held a faded, yellowed map, the coordinates marking the location of the Titan's hidden lair. She had been part of the final resistance, leading small bands of survivors in guerrilla strikes against the alien invaders. But now, with the enemy closing in, it was time for humanity's final stand. "Commander Voss," a voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Captain Miko Serrano, a tall man with sharp eyes, approaching with urgency in his stride. "We've just received intel. The Zraz fleet is preparing to launch their final assault," he said, his voice tense. "This could be it. We need to activate the Titan now. If we wait any longer, we'll lose our last chance." Kala nodded, her expression grim. She had hoped for more time, but the clock was ticking. If they couldn't bring the Titan online in time, Earth would fall to the invaders. "Understood, Captain. Prepare the team. We're moving out," she ordered, her voice steady though her heart raced. Together, they led their ragtag crew to the excavation site, a heavily fortified underground bunker near the ruins of New York City. The landscape was scarred by craters, firestorms, and the wreckage of long-lost battles. The once proud skyline had been replaced by skeletal structures, ravaged by the invaders' weapons of mass destruction. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal, and the sky above was choked with dark clouds, blocking out the sun. There was no hope left in the world above ground, and the survivors had learned to adapt to the harsh conditions. But deep beneath the surface, in the heart of the ruined city, they had found a glimmer of hope. The Titan was no mere machine. It was a living relic, an ancient artificial intelligence that had been built not only to destroy but to protect. It had been dormant for centuries, its systems powered down until the day it was needed again. That day had come. Kala, Miko, and the rest of the team descended into the bunker, their footsteps echoing in the cold, empty space. The walls were lined with dusty, ancient consoles, now powered by the emergency generators that had long been offline. The crew worked in tense silence, the weight of their task pressing heavily on them. The Titan's activation sequence was complex. Only the brightest minds of humanity had ever understood it, and even then only a handful of people knew the full scope of its power. Kala herself had been trained in the Titan systems, but even she had doubts. What if the machine had decayed beyond repair? What if it had lost its edge over the years? "Are you sure about this, Commander?" Miko asked, his voice tight with concern. "There's no other choice," she replied. "We either make this work or we die here along with the rest of humanity." As the team moved to power up the central core, a faint hum vibrated through the air. The walls shuddered and then silence. For a long moment nothing happened. Then without warning the ground trembled. A deep, guttural roar echoed from the depths of the bunker, reverberating through the stone and metal. The Titan had awoken. Its massive form shifted in the darkness, as if stretching after a long, restless slumber. Its limbs, armored in ancient, impenetrable alloys, clicked into place. The enormous head, shaped like a helmet of a forgotten warrior, glowed faintly with the pulsating light of long-dormant systems. Kala's breath caught in her throat. This was it. Humanity's last hope, their final chance. "We have to move quickly," she said, urgency lacing her words. "The Zraz will be here soon." The Titan systems came online in a flash, its eyes lighting up with intelligence and purpose. Its voice, a deep, resonant tone, echoed through the chamber. "Welcome back, Commander Voss. How may I assist in the protection of humanity?" For the first time in years, Kala allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. The Titan was here and it would not be silenced. Not today. Not ever. The air in the underground bunker hummed with energy as the Titan fully came to life. Its massive frame, now fully mobilized, was like a living monolith, its armored surface gleaming faintly in the dim light of the control room. The walls trembled with each movement it made, the sound of its colossal form shifting sending vibrations through the concrete floor. Commander Kala Voss stood still, watching in awe as the Titan systems came online. Its artificial intelligence, an ancient and sophisticated consciousness, had just woken from centuries of dormancy. The fear and doubt she'd carried with her since she had discovered the Titan's existence melted away, replaced by a powerful sense of purpose. "We have a long road ahead of us," Kala said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "The Zraz fleet is already on its way to Earth. We have to stop them before they get to our last stronghold." The Titan's voice, deep and resonant, echoed in the chamber once again. "Acknowledged, Commander Voss. My systems are now fully operational. We shall proceed with the mission parameters." Miko Serrano, standing beside Kala, couldn't help but marvel at the machine's design. "It's more advanced than we imagined," he murmured. "I thought we'd be dealing with a war machine from an ancient era, not something that can speak to us like this." Kala nodded. "This isn't just a war machine. It's a legacy, something humanity left behind, not just for destruction but for protection." She turned her gaze to the massive interface that projected data in the air in front of her. Lines of code streamed by at a dizzying pace as the Titan's central system began integrating the war strategies and battlefield data Kala had been compiling in the weeks before the final assault. "It's our last hope. And it's awake just in time." "Commander," Miko said, his voice tense, "the Zraz fleet is still coming. We need to get this machine to the surface and ready for combat. Do you think it can?" "It can, Captain," Kala interrupted, cutting off his growing concern. "The Titan was designed to handle threats far beyond what the Zraz can throw at us. It's been waiting for this moment." The Titan's massive feet thudded against the ground as it began moving toward the exit of the underground bunker. Its movement was slow, deliberate, and yet the sheer weight of its body seemed to defy all logic. There was no question, it was a living weapon, one unlike anything the Zraz had ever encountered. Its ancient design made it almost impervious to modern technology. As the Titan emerged into the desolate, war-torn landscape of what had once been New York City, its presence became unmistakable. The atmosphere itself seemed to ripple in response to the machine's emergence. It was as if the earth itself recognized the return of its ancient protector. The winds picked up, and the skies, which had been shrouded in dark clouds since the beginning of the war, seemed to part ever so slightly, offering a glimpse of the moon. For a brief moment the world fell silent. "Commander," Miko said, looking up at the enormous form of the Titan, now standing at the edge of the destroyed city. "The Zraz fleet is approaching faster than we anticipated. They're going to hit us with everything they have." Kala nodded, her mind already racing with calculations. "We need to move quickly. The Titan's sensors are going to give us an edge, but it's not invincible. We need to use its strength wisely." The Titan, with its immense size and overwhelming firepower, might have been seen as a one-size-fits-all solution, but the reality was far different. The Zraz had long since mastered ways to defeat even the most advanced technology, and while the Titan's defenses were formidable, it needed careful coordination to be effective. "Prepare the targeting systems," Kala ordered. "We'll need to take out their command ships first. Disrupt their coordination before we engage their ground forces." "Understood," Miko replied, his fingers flying over his own console as he interfaced with the Titan's advanced targeting systems. Activating primary weaponry. The Titan's chest compartment opened, revealing a series of massive cannons that seemed to hum with raw power. Without a moment's hesitation, the Titan leveled its cannons toward the sky, aiming for the incoming Zraz fleet. Kala felt the earth tremble beneath her feet as the Titan's weapons powered up, the air thick with the anticipation of what was to come. Just as the first alien ships broke through the atmosphere, the Titan fired. The blast was unlike anything Kala had ever witnessed. A pulse of blinding energy shot through the sky, searing through the darkness with devastating speed. The first wave of Zraz ships disintegrated in an instant, their hulls torn apart by the sheer force of the Titan's firepower. A ripple of energy spread outward, knocking the remaining ships off their course and destabilizing their formation. "Direct hit," Miko shouted, his voice tinged with disbelief. They didn't even have time to respond. But even as the first victory seemed secure, the Titan's sensors began to detect something troubling, something that would require even more than just raw power. "They're adapting," Kala muttered, her brow furrowing. "The Zraz must have some sort of countermeasure to this." The sky crackled as the remaining ships in the Zraz fleet adjusted their trajectory. New kinds of weapons were being deployed, energy shields that shimmered in the air and rapid deployment drones that swarmed like locusts, intent on overwhelming the Titan. Kala gripped the controls tighter. "The real battle is about to begin," she said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead. "Get ready, Titan. We're not done yet." The Titan's answer was a resounding roar as it locked into its battle stance, ready to face the overwhelming might of the Zra's fleet. Humanity's final stand had only just begun. The sky above Earth darkened further as the remnants of the Zra's fleet reformed, their weapons powering up, their strategy evolving to counter the Titan's unprecedented power. The first wave of attacks had been devastating, but the alien invaders weren't stupid. They had already adapted, and they now seemed determined to overwhelm the Titan with speed and precision. Calavas watched through the Titan's interface, eyes scanning the data streams that flashed across the holographic displays. Her mind raced, calculating their next move. "Captain, the Zras are deploying adaptive energy shields and reinforcement drones," she said, her voice cool and focused. "They've learned how to deflect the Titan's primary blast. We need to move fast before they start using heavy ordnance." Miko Serrano's face was grim as he processed the data. "They're smart, I'll give them that," he muttered. "But we have a trump card. We just need to make it work." Kala's thoughts raced as she studied the battlefield. The Titan's primary weapon had already proven itself to be a devastating force, but the alien shields, glowing with an eerie purple hue, had absorbed the next few shots without significant damage. The drones, sleek and fast, now darted around the Titan, like angry hornets attempting to strike from every direction. "We'll need to keep them off balance," Kala said, her eyes narrowing. "Titan, engage evasive maneuvers. Miko, direct the secondary cannons to focus on the drones. The shields will hold for a while, but we need to eliminate their mobility." The Titan's voice boomed in response. "Acknowledged." Evasive maneuvers commencing. With an uncanny fluidity for such a massive machine, the Titan shifted its position, ducking behind the remnants of a skyscraper for cover as the drones streaked toward it. Its secondary cannons erupted with blue-hot energy, lashing out in quick, powerful bursts. The drones, though fast, were no match for the Titan's targeting systems. One by one they were obliterated in mid-flight, their wreckage scattering across the skyline like fireworks. But there were too many. For every drone that was destroyed, two more took its place. The Zras had anticipated the Titan's strategy and overwhelmed it with numbers, sending swarms of drones to harry the machine, their smaller forms dancing in erratic patterns to avoid its fire. "We need to keep the pressure on them," Miko said, his hands flying over the controls. "They'll try to wear us down with attrition." Kala's eyes never left the holographic battlefield. The Titan's sensors were tracking the drones with unnerving precision, but she knew they were just the beginning. "Stay on the drones, but we need a more aggressive strategy. They're testing our defenses, seeing how much punishment the Titan can take. Let's show them they're not the only ones who can adapt." The Titan's voice interrupted her, calm and authoritative, switching to aggressive assault mode. Weapons systems recalibrated. Without warning, the Titan's massive arms shifted into combat mode, revealing hidden compartments filled with weapons, laser-guided rockets, plasma blades, and more. The Titan's frame seemed to hum with energy as it powered up, preparing to unleash everything it had. Kala's eyes narrowed. The first of the Zra ships launched another volley of plasma missiles, aiming directly at the Titan. But this time the Titan was ready. "Deploy countermeasures," Kala ordered. The Titan's defense systems activated with an earth-shattering roar. A cloud of high-frequency EMP grenades burst from its shoulders, disabling the incoming missiles mid-flight. The air around the Titan sparked with the chaotic energy of jamming signals and crackling electronic interference. "We're starting to turn the tide," Miko said with a grin, watching the missiles disintegrate in the air. But the Zras were not without more tricks up their sleeves. Kala could see their flagship, massive and menacing, positioning itself above the battlefield. Its hull shimmered as it deployed a massive energy dome, one that began to absorb all of the Titan's weaponry. The very air around the flagship crackled with raw, unstable power. "We have to disable that flagship," Kala said, her voice tight with urgency. "It's powering up some kind of super weapon." A low rumble vibrated through the Titan's body, as it locked onto the flagship's signature energy readings. Its targeting systems adjusted instantly, calculating the necessary trajectory for its next attack. Kala ordered, "Titan, target the core reactor. It's their weak point. We take it out, the rest of their fleet will scatter." With a deep, mechanical growl, the Titan's massive cannons reoriented themselves toward the heart of the enemy flagship. The ship's energy shield flared with intensity as the Titan's weapons fired. The first shot rang out, striking the shield with a blinding burst of blue light. But the shield absorbed it, deflecting the blast. Again? Kala shouted, her pulse quickening. Focus all energy on the reactor. Another shot. And then another. The flagship's shield flickered, weakened by the constant barrage. The Titan's weapons fired relentlessly, each shot closer to the flagship's core. Kala felt the ground shake beneath her feet as the Titan powered up its final shot. Titan, this is it, she whispered to herself, her fingers gripping the command panel tightly. We need to end this. A pulse of energy erupted from the Titan's cannons, larger and more concentrated than anything before. It slammed into the flagship's shield, this time breaking through, crashing into the core reactor with an explosion of light and energy. The flagship shuddered, its hull buckling under the intense assault. Direct hit. Miko shouted. It's going critical. The flagship's core exploded with a deafening roar. For a moment, the battlefield went quiet as the shockwave reverberated through the air. The remaining ships in the Zra's fleet scattered, their command structure thrown into chaos. Kala breathed a sigh of relief but knew it was only temporary. The Zras weren't done yet. This battle was far from over. But in this moment, the Titan had delivered a message. Earth would not fall without a fight. The fight had only just begun. The shockwave from the exploding flagship sent ripples of energy through the atmosphere, rattling buildings and sending plumes of debris into the air. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow. The Zra's fleet faltered, disoriented by the catastrophic loss of their command vessel. But only for a moment. As the last remnants of the flagship disintegrated into space debris, the remaining Zra's forces quickly recalibrated, their fleet regrouping and forming a new strategy. The Titan's victory was a temporary one. The invaders had suffered a significant blow, but they were not so easily defeated. New reinforcements began to appear on the horizon, more ships arriving from the farthest reaches of their empire. The true strength of the Zras was only just beginning to show. Commander, reinforcements are arriving, more than we anticipated, Miko said, his voice laced with concern. The Zras have already launched their second wave. They're not pulling back. Kala's eyes never left the display. She could see the incoming ships, countless in number, descending from the depths of space like a swarm of locusts, their engines burning bright as they prepared to descend on Earth. The Titan's victory had been a significant morale boost, but it was clear, the Zras weren't backing down. They'll be here in minutes, she said, her voice steady, but the weight of the situation pressing down on her. We need to prepare for the second wave, but we can't let up the pressure. Not now. Titan, Kala called, speaking to the war machine, prepare for sustained combat. Lock onto all incoming targets. The Titan's voice rumbled in response. Affirmative, Commander Voss. Engaging new targets. Weapons systems online. Defensive protocols active. But even as the Titan geared up for another round of battle, the situation on the ground was becoming more precarious. The survivors of Earth's resistance forces, who had fought alongside Kala and her crew, were preparing for a counteroffensive. Their numbers were small, but they were fierce, determined not to let Earth fall without a final fight. The ground forces were preparing to launch their own assault to draw the Zra's ground forces away from the Titan and protect the critical locations that remained. We need to split our efforts, Kala said. Miko, stay with the Titan. Focus on air superiority. I'll take a ground squad to disrupt their forces. If we can get to their communication hubs, we might be able to disable their coordination. Miko's face tightened with determination, though the worry never left his eyes. Understood, Commander. Be careful out there. Always, Kala said, her voice a mix of resolve and grim humor. The ground forces were already assembling, a small ragtag group of soldiers, engineers and civilians, all who had survived against impossible odds. With weapons drawn and explosives in hand, they were ready to take on whatever the Zras had left. Kala's team included some of Earth's finest, a mix of veterans, skilled engineers and tactical specialists. Together, they made their way through the ruins of the city, their eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of the approaching Zra's ground troops. Every step felt like a countdown to something inevitable. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal and scorched earth, the remnants of battles long past. As they reached the outskirts of what had once been Central Park, they saw it, the Zra's ground forces, an army of alien soldiers heavily armored and armed with weapons that flickered with unstable energy. Their legions moved with precision, every step calculated, each unit moving in perfect unison. The ground battle was about to begin. "Stay sharp, everyone," Kala said, her voice low but commanding. "We move fast and hit hard. Our job is to disrupt their communications and slow their reinforcements. Titans handling the rest. Let's give them hell." The resistance soldiers nodded, their faces grim, but there was no hesitation in their movements. With a single command they rushed forward, weapons raised. The first volley of fire came from the Zraz, energy blasts that lanced through the air, striking the Earth's defenders with terrifying precision. But the resistance fought back, the roar of gunfire and the sound of explosions filling the air as they fought to keep the Zraz forces from advancing. Back above, the Titan was engaged in a brutal aerial battle, its cannons firing with devastating power, targeting the incoming ships that threatened to overwhelm Earth's remaining defenses. Every shot from the Titan tore through enemy vessels like paper, sending fiery remnants of the Zraz fleet scattering into space. But still more ships came. The tide of the battle seemed endless. "Commander." Miko's voice crackled through Kala's comms. "The Zraz are deploying something new, massive ground walkers. They're colossal." Kala turned to see the shadow of the massive Zraz war machines emerging from the distance. Mechanized behemoths, each towering over the battlefield. Their legs were thick, armored pillars, capable of crushing anything beneath them, while their arms were lined with weapons capable of obliterating entire platoons with a single strike. "We've faced their drones, their ships, now they bring this?" Kala muttered, feeling a surge of frustration. "The Titan can handle this. Miko, target their weak points. I'll focus on the ground forces." The Titan's voice boomed across the comms. "Acknowledged, Commander." Commencing anti-ground walker assault. With a sudden, deafening roar, the Titan launched a volley of explosive rockets directly at the legs of the towering walkers. The first explosion sent a shockwave through the battlefield, causing the ground to tremble beneath Kala's feet. A second strike hit a walker's leg, severing it entirely, causing the massive machine to collapse into the wreckage of what was once a city block. But the remaining walkers were closing in, their firepower unrelenting. Earth's resistance forces were making headway, but the sheer scale of the Zraz onslaught seemed insurmountable. The ground battle raged, smoke rising in thick plumes as the resistance fought desperately to hold their ground. The Titan was making strides against the Zraz fleet, but its time was running out. The invaders were relentless, their numbers far outmatching Earth's defenses. And yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, Kala could feel the weight of Earth's will to survive. They were fighting and they were not giving up. For humanity, the final stand had begun. But the true test of their strength would come in the moments ahead. The battlefield had become a hellscape. The once proud landmarks of Earth were now little more than shattered ruins, the remnants of humanity's civilization reduced to rubble. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burned ozone and the metallic stench of weapons discharging. Earth's forces, vastly outnumbered and outgunned, fought back with every last ounce of strength they had. But the Zraz were relentless, new forces arriving faster than anyone could count. Above them, the Titan continued to tear through the skies, its massive frame cutting through the air with the precision of a predator on the hunt. It was unstoppable. Its cannons fired with devastating power, blasting Zraz warships out of the sky in fiery explosions. But even the Titans might seem like a flickering candle against the encroaching darkness of the alien invaders. For every ship it destroyed, 2 more replaced it. For every walker it shattered, a dozen more seemed to emerge from the horizon. Back on the ground, Kalavas and her team fought on, desperately trying to hold the line. The Zraz ground walkers had proven to be an even greater threat than expected. Towering mechanical giants with weapons that could obliterate a city block in seconds, they trampled over resistance forces with cold, brutal efficiency. The resistance was being driven back, slowly but surely, but they refused to retreat. They would stand their ground for as long as they could. Kala crouched behind a shattered column, her pulse pounding in her ears. The sounds of the battle, explosions, the shriek of energy blasts, the roar of the Titan's weapons, were deafening. Her eyes scanned the chaos around her, looking for any signs of hope. Miko's voice crackled in her earpiece, tight with strain. "Commander, I need you to look at this." Kala didn't need to ask what Miko was referring to. She saw it on the horizon as soon as the transmission came through, an enormous Zraz battleship, bigger than anything they had faced before, descending from the sky. Its hull shimmered with a strange, pulsating energy field, and a low hum of power seemed to radiate from it. This was no standard vessel. This was the Zraz's final weapon. "Titan," Kala said, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. "Target that ship. Focus everything on it. We can't let it land." "I am aware, Commander Voss," the Titan responded, its voice calm though the urgency was clear. "I will engage the target." The Titan's weapon systems hummed, powering up with a deep, resonating thrum. The massive war machine's arms shifted as it readied its most powerful cannons, but even as it prepared to unleash its fury, something unexpected happened. The Zraz battleship activated a shield so powerful that the Titan's energy blasts fizzled upon contact, dissipating harmlessly into the air. "Impossible." Miko's voice rang out, laced with disbelief. "Their technologies evolved beyond anything we've ever encountered." Kala's eyes narrowed. "That ship has to be their command vessel, their last trump card. We can't let them deploy it." The sky seemed to darken even further as the battleship slowly descended, its massive form blocking out the sun. The ground trembled beneath Kala's feet as the ship released a shockwave, sending a surge of energy through the atmosphere. The resistance forces, already on the brink, stumbled back from the impact, disoriented and shaken. "Commander," Miko said, his voice strained, "I'm seeing something else. The battleship, it's opening its hangar bays. There's something inside it, something huge." Kala's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't enough that the Zraz had overwhelming numbers. They had something else in store, something even worse than the walkers. She looked to her squad, and their faces reflected the same grim realization. From within the battleship's hangar, massive, dark shapes began to emerge, creatures that dwarfed the Zraz walkers, their forms gleaming with black armor, their eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent intelligence. These were not machines, nor were they entirely organic. They were hybrids, biomechanical abominations, each one a monstrous fusion of alien technology and living tissue. "Those are their commanders," Kala muttered under her breath, her voice taut with disbelief. "The elite of the Zraz legions. They were waiting for this moment." The first of the commanders touched down with a ground-shaking thud, its massive form towering over the battlefield like a living colossus. Its armor gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, and its eyes glowed with the same pulsating energy that emanated from the battleship. Behind it, a dozen more followed, each one larger and more terrifying than the last. "We can't fight those things head-on," Miko said, his voice edged with panic. "We'll be wiped out." Kala's mind raced. There had to be a way to stop them, there had to be some vulnerability they could exploit. But as the commanders advanced, the resistance forces' resolve began to crumble. The new threat was too great, too powerful. Just then, something remarkable happened. The Titan, seemingly reacting to the massive influx of enemy forces, moved into position. Its form, hulking, unstoppable, took a bold step forward, its massive cannons trained directly on the Zraz commanders. The battle had reached a tipping point, and for all its immense size and firepower, the Titan knew this was the moment it would either win or perish. "Commander," the Titan said, its voice booming, "I will not allow Earth to fall." The air crackled with energy as the Titan released a pulse of devastating force, its cannons firing with unrelenting fury. The first few commanders faltered as they were struck head-on by the blast, their massive bodies sparking and shuddering under the force. But the remaining commanders pushed forward, their weapons flaring with deadly energy, intent on finishing what they had started. "This is it," Kala whispered, her voice raw with determination. "We fight or we die here." She turned to her squad, eyes blazing with the fire of a commander who knew there was no retreat, no fallback. The fate of humanity rested on the shoulders of those who stood with her. "On me. We strike now before they can regroup." The resistance soldiers, though battered and exhausted, rallied to her side. They charged toward the Zraz commanders, weapons blazing, knowing full well that their chances of survival were slim. But there was no fear in their hearts. Only the knowledge that if they did not fight, Earth would be lost. The Titan's voice roared in the distance, its weapons blasting through the sky with relentless force. The battle had reached its fiercest point. And in the heart of that chaos, Kala and her team charged forward, fighting for survival, fighting for the future of humanity. And for the first time, it seemed that Earth might have a chance. The ground shook beneath Kala's feet as the last of the Zraz commanders took its first step forward, its massive foot crushing the remnants of a city block beneath it. The battlefield had turned into a killing ground. Smoke, fire, and the stench of destruction filled the air. The resistance forces, though battered and worn, had no choice but to continue the fight. The Titan above them fired relentlessly, but even its firepower seemed insufficient to stop the relentless assault of the biomechanical giants. The Zraz had made their final push, and they had brought their absolute best with them. Kala and her squad charged forward, weapons blazing. Their guns discharged streams of energy, the round striking the heavily armored commanders but barely making a dent. The alien monsters moved with terrifying precision, their arms swinging massive energy blades capable of slicing through buildings as if they were made of paper. "Focus on the legs," Kala shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "We can't take them down head-on, but we can disable their mobility." Her squad moved as one, using their agility and knowledge of their enemy's weak points to get in close. A soldier named Harper threw an explosive charge at one of the commander's legs. The blast sent a jolt through the ground, but it barely fazed the creature. It swung its massive arm toward Harper, knocking him aside with brutal force. "Harper!" Kala cried, but there was no time to mourn. The battle was unforgiving. The resistance forces were closing in around the remaining Zraz commanders, but they were being overwhelmed. The sheer scale of the enemy forces was too much. Just then, a massive explosion erupted to her left. The ground trembled with the force of it, and Kala looked up to see one of the Titan's rocket pods streaking through the sky, slamming into a group of Zraz soldiers. The Titan's fire was relentless, each blast creating craters in the earth, each shot eliminating a wave of invaders. But the commanders were still standing. "Titan, focus your fire on the commander at the center," Kala barked, trying to stay focused as the chaos continued. "We need to disable it before it can attack the heart of the city." The Titan's voice came over the comms, steady as always. "Acknowledged, Commander Voss. Engaging target." The Titan's massive cannons shifted into position, and the air crackled with the buildup of energy. The first shot landed square in the chest of the central commander, its massive frame shaking under the impact. The creature stumbled backward, sparks flying from the exposed joints of its armor. It roared in fury, its enormous eyes glowing with malevolent rage. The Titan did not relent. Another shot, followed by a third, slammed into the commander's chest, its armor buckling under the onslaught. The commander's body was blasted backward, its legs failing beneath it as the explosion ruptured the creature's internal systems. But it didn't fall, not yet. "Keep hitting it." Miko's voice crackled over the comms. "Its shield's still up." Kala didn't hesitate. She charged forward, her squad following her as they dodged incoming fire from the remaining commanders. She sprinted toward the fallen creature's massive form, eyes searching for a weak spot, any opening that could allow them to land the final blow. "Harper, get your team on the left leg," Kala shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. "We're going for its core." With a final desperate push, Kala reached the commander's side. Her hands moved quickly, deploying a high-explosive charge into the seam where the armor had been cracked open. The device was small, but it packed enough power to take down an entire tank, enough to reach the heart of the commander's armor. The creature's eyes flared with deadly intent as it saw Kala's movement, but she was too fast. She activated the charge, diving out of the way just as the explosion detonated. A massive shockwave erupted from the impact site, sending a ring of destruction outward. The ground cracked and splintered beneath her feet, but the blast was enough. The commander's massive body was flung backward, its chest armor shattered, exposing its vulnerable core. The creature's eyes flickered and dimmed as it collapsed to the ground with a deafening thud. The battlefield fell eerily silent for a moment. Kala's breath was ragged, and her heart hammered in her chest as she stood in the middle of the destruction. The other commanders were still advancing, but the death of the first had dealt a significant blow to their morale. Their movements slowed, their attacks less focused. "Titan now!" Kala screamed into the comms. The Titan didn't hesitate. A final barrage of energy pulses exploded from its cannons, striking the fallen commander in the core of its exposed body. The creature's body writhed as it was torn apart, and then, nothing. The commander fell silent, its monstrous form collapsing in on itself, its glowing eyes dimming to nothingness. "First one down," Miko's voice echoed over the comms. "But there are more where that came from." Kala turned to face the remaining commanders. They were retreating, their massive frames retreating back toward the battleship. It wasn't victory, yet. But this was a significant moment. The resistance forces had just taken down the first of their greatest threats. "Don't let them escape," Kala barked to her squad. "We finish this now." With one final, collective push, the resistance forces surged forward. The Zraz commanders, shaken by the fall of their leader, tried to retreat toward the safety of their massive ship. But they had underestimated humanity's will to survive. The resistance fought back with everything they had left. In the skies above, the Titan had already begun a final assault on the battleship, its weapons locking on to the massive vessel as it hovered above the battlefield. Kala's team pressed on, closing the distance between them and the remaining commanders. Each shot from their weapons found its mark. The remaining giants fell one by one, their bodies shaking and crumpling beneath the weight of humanity's defiance. Then, with a final, bone-shaking explosion, the Titan's final salvo tore into the Zra's battleship. The ship shuddered and groaned as its shields collapsed, its core exploding in a massive burst of energy that lit up the sky. The battlefield fell into a deep, uneasy silence. The battle was not over, but for the first time since the Zras arrived, the tide had shifted. Kala's breathing slowed, her pulse still racing. There was no cheering, no celebration. The resistance was still here, still fighting, and the Zras might regroup, yet this was a victory. Humanity had taken a stand. And they had shown the universe that Earth was not going down without a fight. "We're not done," Kala said, her voice filled with determination. "But we've just taken the first step toward winning this war." And with that, humanity's heart remained unbroken, against all odds. The battle had raged for hours, and the remnants of the Earth's resistance forces stood amidst the wreckage of the battlefield, their bodies battered and bruised, their eyes filled with a fierce, unyielding resolve. The smoke of war still hung thick in the air, and the ground was littered with the remains of the fallen, their own and the invaders. But through the chaos and devastation, there was something new in the air, a fragile but undeniable glimmer of hope. Kala Voss surveyed the landscape, her eyes scanning the broken city, her thoughts running as fast as the adrenaline that still pulsed through her veins. The Titan's cannons had ceased fire, its massive form towering over the battlefield, an unmistakable sign that the battle had reached its turning point. It had been a fight for survival, a fight against insurmountable odds. And somehow, against all reason, humanity had won, at least for now. Miko's voice crackled over the comms, cutting through the fog of exhaustion and disbelief. "Commander, the remaining Zras forces are retreating. The battleship is gone. The command structure has collapsed. They're pulling back to their nearest staging point." Kala allowed herself a brief moment of relief, but it was fleeting. She couldn't afford to dwell on the victory, not yet. The war was far from over. "Good," Kala replied, her voice steady despite the weight of everything pressing down on her. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." Miko didn't argue. He knew as well as she did that the Zras were relentless. If they retreated, it was only to regroup, to lick their wounds before launching another wave. Earth had only just begun to push back, and while they had struck a major blow, they couldn't afford to think they were safe. Kala turned toward the wreckage of the Zras command ship, still hovering in the sky like a dark cloud over the remnants of Earth's capital. Its massive form was now burning, the last remnants of the Zras empire flickering out with every passing second. But she knew deep down that the most dangerous part of this war was just beginning. "Prepare the team. We're moving out," she ordered, her voice cutting through the murmur of her soldiers. The ground forces were already regrouping, tending to their wounded and preparing for the inevitable next wave. They had made it through this battle, but there was still so much left to do. As Kala walked toward the remaining resistance leaders, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It had become something much bigger. Earth wasn't just fighting to hold on to its place in the universe, it was fighting to prove that it belonged. Humanity had always been underestimated. They had always been seen as weak, fragile creatures in a vast and uncaring universe. But now, after this victory, that perception was shattered. Earth had taken its first real stand, and it had made a statement: "We are not to be overlooked, and we will never bow to the will of invaders." "We need to start thinking about the next move," one of the resistance leaders, Colonel Reyes, said, his voice low but filled with authority. "The Zras will be back. They won't leave us alone. But this victory, it's given us a chance. We can use it to unite the nations, rally the remaining survivors, and prepare for the next phase of the war." Kala nodded, her gaze unwavering. She had seen what humanity was capable of. The Titan had proved that machines, no matter how powerful, were not invincible. But it was the people of Earth, the hearts and minds who fought alongside the Titan, that had made the difference. It was their resilience, their sheer will to survive, that had tipped the scales. "It's time for the next phase," she agreed. "We'll need to rebuild. But first we need to establish a foothold. We need to send a message to the Zras. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future of this planet." As the sun began to rise over the horizon, the first light of a new day broke through the clouds of smoke and ash. The stars, once so cold and distant, now seemed just a little closer. The sun, the symbol of life on Earth, seemed to carry with it a promise. The promise that, no matter what came next, humanity would never give up. Above, the Titan hovered, its colossal form silent and still, waiting. Its mission was not yet complete. There would be more battles, more sacrifices. But today Earth had won. "We've shown them what we can do," Kala said to herself, her voice filled with quiet strength. "Now we show them what we'll become." Humanity would never again be seen as fragile. They had stood firm against an overwhelming force and they had triumphed. Now they would rebuild. They would unite. And they would make sure the Zraz, and any other invader, knew that Earth would never be silenced. The Titan, humanity's last stand and greatest weapon, stood as a testament to that promise. It had carried the world through the darkest moments, but it was not the machine that had won the day, it was the people. And the story of Earth's resistance would be remembered, not as a tale of survival, but as the dawn of a new era. An era where Earth would rise to take its rightful place among the stars.